Hey everyone, welcome back to the landscape photography series today. We're going to be tackling something amazing, and it might be a little imitating at first, but it's okay, and I promise it's not the end of the world. This is where the fun really begins. Today we're going to start shooting in manual mode. I'm going to break it down step by step so you can start taking full control of your camera. So let's jump into it, my friends. First things first, you'll want to switch your camera mode to manual. Now this gives you control over three key features in your settings: your aperture, your shutter speed, and your ISO. These work together to control the exposure of your image. Basically, how bright and how dark it is going to be, what is in focus, what is not in focus. So let's start with aperture. This controls how much light enters through your lens and also affects your depth of field. How much of the image is in focus. A small f number like f2.8 means more light and shallow depth of field. But with a higher f number like f11 and f16 lets in less light but gives you more scenes in focus. And it's great for landscape. And this is where it gets interesting, because adjusting these are going to be a lot of fun. A good experiment is to line up three cans, angle at a 45-degree, focus on the middle, and start at f2.8 or 4, the lowest f-stop you have, and then go up to f22. Okay. Next is shutter speed. This controls how long your camera sensor is exposed to the light. A fast shutter speed like 1/500th of a second freezes motion, while speeds like 1/30th or a 30-second exposure lets in more light and creates more of a motion blur. Think of a camera and an extension of your eye, right? So we talked about aperture. Your aperture is going to correlate as your pupil, right? If you're using f2.8, you're going to have a bigger pupil compared to f22, which is going to be really, really small. Your shutter speed is equivalent to how you blink, right? Your camera's taking the picture. If you have a 1/500th of a second, it's going to be a quick blink. But if you have a 30-second, it's going to stay open for 30 seconds, right? And then lastly, we have ISO. Think of ISO as your camera's sensitivity to light. Bright conditions, you want to keep it at a low ISO, 50, 100, 200. But in dark settings, you might need to bump it up to 400 or 800 or even higher. Just be careful, because too high of an ISO can add noise, which will make your image look grainy. Now, if you're shooting film, you should already understand this. The trick is to finding the right balance between these three. Start by setting your aperture based on how much the scene you want in focus. Generally, I would say f8. That's a good start. And then you want to focus and make sure your camera is focused on said subject. Now you're going to set your shutter speed to control the light, and then you're going to mess with your ISO. Okay? Once we understand these three settings and how they correlate, you're going to be golden. But one thing you got to remember, and this is very, very, very important, is that with these three settings, there is no such thing as a perfect setting. If you adjust one, you have to adjust something else. And this is where understanding stops come in, which we'll cover in a more detailed video later. But one more tip. Most cameras have a light meter. You can see in a viewfinder or on your screen, and this helps you know if it's too bright or too dark. And you want to try and keep it in the middle or come down. Now, if you don't have your light meter on, highly recommend turning it on, but I also recommend turning on what is called your histogram, and we will cover that in a later video as well. But your histogram tells you what the scene is displaying in your darks, your mids, and your highlights. And it's going to look like this weird graph. Okay, everything to the left of your histogram is dark, everything to the right of the histogram is your brights, and everything in between is your midtones. So, but we'll cover that in a later image. So there we go. With a little bit of practice, shooting in manual gives you total control over your photos. start experimenting with different combinations of aperture, shutter speed, and ISO, and see what you can transform within your photography. And hopefully you enjoy this video. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more photography tips, and I will see you guys in the next video. Cheers, man.